Hey everybody, my name is Taha Shashtari. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to preview an image before uploading it. So we will add the file input into the page, and when the user selects an image, then we will display it even before it's uploaded. So let's start by adding the file input on the page. And then let's add the image element here so it displays the image once it's selected. If I reload the page, we can see that the file input is displayed here, but we can't see the image. Let's make things easier to see by changing the image size and add a border to it. Okay, so now we can see the image element here. So to display the preview image, we have to do three things. First, we need to get the file the user selected, and then give that file to the file reader to read it, and then display the results in the image element. We can access the file the user selected through the file's property on the file input. So for example, if we select a file here, and then if we get a reference to the input, then we can see the selected file in the file's property. So you can see that it returns a file list, and it contains the file as the first element. So to access that file, we need to access the first file in that list. Okay, so the next step is to give it to the file reader. So the browser allows us to read files through its FileReader API. And the file reader is just a simple object that we can create like this. So the file reader has a bunch of methods to read files, but the one we need here is the read as data URL. So we would call read as data URL method on that file like this. And that method takes the file as the argument. And we already have that, so we can just pass it here. And when the reader finishes reading the file, it fires the load event. And we can listen to that event to access the file content. And then we'll pass that file content to the image element source attribute. So before we implement this in our code, let me talk about displaying inline images in the browser. So as we know, displaying an image requires us passing the URL of the image in the source attribute. But in our case, we don't have the URL of the image. Instead, we have the content of the image. Images are stored in binary, but the browser can't understand binary here. Instead, we need to encode it into base64 string and then use the data URL format to display that here. So the data URL format is like this: data colon and then the MIME type of the file, which is in this case image, and it can be JPG, and then the type of the encoding, and in this case it's base64. And after that, we display the content of the file here. Now we don't need to handle this ourselves, the file reader handles this for us. All we have to do is to pass the content of the file that the reader has read to this attribute. Okay, so let's start with the first step. Let's get a reference to the input element. So when the user selects a file, the file input fires the change event. So let's listen to that. Now let's get access to the first file, which is the file that the user selected. Okay, so now we need to create the file reader and give it the file to read it. So let's create the file reader here. And let's give it the file here. Okay, so now when the reader finishes reading the file, it fires the load event. So let's listen to that below the event listener here. So we can access the file content using the result property on the reader object. So the result would be here. Now let's pass the content to the source attribute of the image element. So first let's get access to the image element here. And then let's pass the content to the source attribute. Okay, so let's test that. Cool, yeah, so it works. I hope you learned something new here, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.